Rev up your engines!
Seamus says, what are your thoughts on a Tesla Model Y in eastern Missouri? Well, one, I don't care where you are, I would not buy a Tesla Model Y. Overpriced garbage, right? You're in eastern Missouri. I imagine you probably don't have that many charging stations anywhere, so you get stuck. What are you going to do for electricity, right? Electric cars are still in their infancy. If you want to be a guinea pig for the car corporations making them, go right ahead. It's your money. But you get stranded somewhere, and I'm assuming you live in eastern Missouri. Who the heck's going to fix that thing when it breaks? It's bad enough in the big cities to find anybody that knows how to work on Teslas, and when then we break, they just ream you. The prices are sky high. I'm not a fan. The prices that they're going for and unproven technology, they should start like they do in Europe. Don't make big cars to go long distances for electric cars. They should make small little ones. And then if that works okay, it's great for people to do little commuting in the city, go around little cities. Fine. I mean, in France, they even had those Citroën 2CVs, two-cylinder cars. And people like driving them slow as could be. But out in the rural areas, in the cities, there's no room. They're tiny cars. They're fine. They should start with small, work their way up. Don't say, we'll build the big ones first. No, electricity in big cars don't go as well as with little cars where you can get all the bugs out. They weigh less. The batteries don't have to be as strong. They cost less to build. So I would never buy one no matter where I was. Robert says, Scotty, sometimes my wife's 2017 Pathfinder, 89,000 miles, stumbles and fires up. Doesn't do it all the time. No codes. I've done GDI cleaner. What do you think? If a car sometimes stumbles and sometimes doesn't, first thing to do, have your battery and your alternator load tested. Any mechanic can do it in 5 minutes. You can go to most auto parts stores. They'll do it. They'll test it. Weak battery, weak alternator will do that, right? Okay, let's say they check out okay. You've tried the GDI cleaning. Obviously, it didn't fix it. Change the fuel filter. If you have a clogged fuel filter, it will do the same thing. And then, of course, if it's not the fuel filter, it could be the pump. But the pump's very expensive. You could pressure test the pump, but only after you change the filter. Because if you pressure test it with a dirty filter, it'll give you a false reading. And you might need a $20 filter instead of a $500 fuel pump. So you always want to change the filter first. It's going to be as simple as a clogged filter. Try those in those order and then pray. It's not something like computers starting to go out or fuel injectors are starting to wear out. Usually it's something simply, though, with only 89,000 miles. It's Eric says, I got a BMW 318. When I press in my clutch, it vibrates. It never did that before, and it makes a weird noise under the hood. Okay, you step on your clutch and it vibrates. If you want to fix it, you're going to have to pull the transmission off. Something in your clutch is worn. It could be a worn throwout bearing, could be a worn pressure plate, right? Could be a warped clutch friction assembly. But here's the thing. You got to pay a ton of money to pull the transmission off. When you do it, buy a clutch kit. Get all the parts. Put all new parts again, then you don't have to think about it. You don't want to guess at which particular part it is because it's such a job pulling the transmission off. Change all the clutch parts and then it'll go away. Albert Davison said, Scotty, what do you think of a 2006 LS 430, 130,000 miles with air suspension? I hear they're prone to fail. Yes, they do, especially those old ones. When they put all that fancy suspension systems on, yeah, they ride better, but when they break, money goes out the wazoo. Now, ages ago, I had a customer in Houston, Ron, he had one, right? Luckily for him, he had the year that some had air suspension, some had normal. I went to a salvage yard and I got the normal system and I put him on his air suspension and saved him thousands of bucks, right? The lights still came on, but he could drive it fine. It wasn't sinking and riding crappy. But the modern ones, hey, you got to replace them. They cost a fortune. That's why you don't want to buy old luxury cars that have things like air suspension. All that stuff's going to break and cost a fortune when they break down. Everything breaks eventually. David Reeder says, Scotty, you got an '06 Avalon. How do I know if I need an evaporator? The air conditioning system has the condenser in the front of your radiator. The compressor compresses it, pushes the fluid through it, then it goes 2 lines to the evaporator that's inside the dash. So you can't see it. So they're not that easy to test. First thing you can do is put a pressure tester on it, gauges, and see what the pressures are. And if you find out that the low side is real low, and the high side's high, that generally means the evaporator's clogged up and you're going to have to replace it because it's trying to push it through and it can't. So since it can't go through it right, your low side can go so low that it might even go negative pressure because it's sucking to get something that's clogged up. Now back in the day, they were easier to check because back in the day, you had 3 or 4 service ports that you could test the pressures, but they don't do that anymore. They only have 1 high and 1 low. So there is a bit of educated guesswork. Now, of course, if it's leaking, if the evaporator's leaking, you get a mechanic like me, we got our sniffer machines. We just turn it on and we stick the sniffer right into the dash, and if it starts beeping, you know the evaporator's leaking and you got to replace it. Luis Martinez said, is a Nissan Sentra manual transmission better than automatic? I'm planning to get a 2016 or 15. Yes, definitely. The automatic transmissions are Jatco automatic transmissions. They're crap. Some of the worst in the world, right? Their manual transmissions are perfectly fine. If you don't mind driving a manual transmission, you're getting a used vehicle that's like 8, 9 years old. So you want a guy like me, a mechanic, check it out for you. That's only common sense, right? The manuals can be good. I would say never buy one if it has an automatic transmission. But with a manual, if everything else checks out okay, yeah, it could be a decent car. One Way 378 says, hey, I was driving and my brakes went all the way to the floor. Kind of weird. Then it went away. Now I have the scratchy noise. The brakes are fine. Though random scratching. Okay, well, they're not fine. It went to the floor. Somewhere you got a leak. You start logical with any kind of brake work. Take all 4 wheels off and look at them. If there's a leak there, they'll be wet and there'll be brake fluid all over the place. You fix that first. Let's say they're bone dry. You don't see any leaks. Well, it went to the floor. And if you don't see any leaks anywhere, then you would start by replacing the brake master cylinder. Because when you step on a master cylinder, if it leaks inside itself, it'll go to the floor. But like a heart murmur in a person, there's no blood coming out anywhere. It leaks inside itself. So you won't see any leakage, but it'll make it sink down to the floor. Now, pray it's that simple, because almost all modern cars have anti-lock brake systems, ABS. And the ABS systems have giant modules that can cost thousands of dollars to replace, and they can also leak internally, and they'll do the same thing. That's super expensive. So pray it's just your brake master cylinder. Next question. What are your thoughts on a used Ridgeline? Well, that's a rather ironic question, because a couple hours ago, a guy just brought me a used Ridgeline that he bought with 75,000 miles. And here's the thing. I checked it all out, and it was a fine car. It was really in great shape. But he bought something that I generally tell people not to buy. He bought himself a car that was totaled by an insurance company and had a refurbished title. He knew it had a refurbished title because he bought it from the body shop that did the work, right? So he got one for a really good price. And he paid like 15 grand, and he saw ones that were 25 grand that were the same year with even more mileage than his, but they hadn't been totaled, right? The guys at the body shop did a good job. I went through with a fine-tooth comb. It was an excellent vehicle. No codes on the engine. It ran perfectly fine. It looked good. They did good body work where it was at in the front. And they're excellent vehicles. Now, realize they're gas hogs. The best he got was 18 miles a gallon, and the worst was 12. So they're gas hogs. They're big, heavy vehicles, right? But in terms of running, they're excellent trucks. They're not great for towing. They're only rated to tow 5,000 pounds. Honda's only pickup truck, and like other Hondas, they can last a really long time. Legend says, is it normal for my exhaust to pulsate a little when it warms up? Okay, when your car warms up, the computer system makes it a little bit richer. It needs extra fuel to start a cold engine. It's all done by computers these days. And as they age, they can be a little bit off, and you'll often get a little bit of pulsation as the engine's running a little bit too rich. If it warms up, then it's totally normal. I wouldn't worry about it at all. Now, if you're talking about not just pulsation, but a louder noise, then I'd go to look for the leak, because when exhaust systems have gasket leaks, when they're cold, you start them up, you'll hear more of the exhaust because they're leaking out of the gaskets, but then as the exhaust heats up and expands, it seals them and the noise goes away. In that case, I would fix the leak if it has a leak, but if it doesn't have a leak, no, I just live with it. Dave Smith says, I have a timer set to my phone for every Thursday at 1. Where have you been lately? Well, I've been here, but here's the thing. I'm on the East Coast now. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time. In a couple of days, Saturday, I'm 10 a.m. Eastern time. Now, when I go back to Tennessee, that's my main base, then it's Thursday at 1 o'clock Central time, and then Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Time. But I'm on the East Coast in Rhode Island now, so it is Thursdays at 1 o'clock Eastern and Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The Sprinter Van Las Vegas says, Scotty, is there any way to turn the gain up? No, I can't, because the weird thing is, the YouTube live streaming, they don't support desktop publishing. So now I'm reading over here off of my desktop, right? I'm reading the questions, but the only way I can broadcast it to is I'm using my Galaxy 6 phone, and there's no adjustments on that. I do have an external mic on it, which works a little bit better, but unfortunately, that's just the way it's set up. I've asked them. There's nothing I can do about it. But here's the thing. I'm answering your questions live here now, right? But I'm also filming it with a camera that's over there, and that's my 4K camera. So it's filming it, and then later you'll see all my answers with extra pictures stuck up on YouTube as actual videos shot in 4K with a really nice microphone. It's a HyperX that's down here. I'm talking into two microphones. You'll hear it great when it's on YouTube as videos, but live, there's really nothing else I can do. I've tried various setups. This is as good as it's going to get. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.